Back to the Lexus that had like the strange leaking fluid stuff. So it's a 3-day order on this little Lexus coolant reservoir cap. It's only like $9, but anyways, I duct tape all this down like I said I was going to do, because there was some fluid here, but most of it was here around the radiator cap. It was going up there, and I thought it was shooting over from this cap because it's pointed right that way, pew, over to here. But I took off our hose right here, overflow hose, and I blew through it. And when I blow through it, it goes straight out this side. It does not come out that hole, surprisingly enough. That hole connects to this hole. It has melted in a way that it goes straight through. Crazy, huh? A little bit comes out this side, but pretty much most of the airflow is coming out here. So when I took this hose off, I found right there little melted spot. So hot coolant's coming out of here. It overheated, kept driving, and of course it won't overheat for us. And it melted everything just around here, and then the hot coolant travels through the overflow hose, and it tees off and it hits straight this way, and that's why we got the meltiness right there. So we know it got overheated, maybe kept driving while it was so freaking hot. They didn't see the temperature gauge or warning lights or anything. So what we got to do is get a new radiator, or as a test, I can JB weld this up before we spend the money on a radiator, and I can try to make it overheat again. So we were low on oil. Might have been low on coolant because it got hot and melted this, because you could see now after our drive, I can see when I put a flashlight in it, but the water level is, it's like this low. And that's probably just from expansion, and then it's coming out here. Expansion coming out here, and then it contracts again. So that's why it's down there on the fluid level. So I need to fix this one way or another. And I don't want to replace the whole radiator or anything. If we do have like a warped head that's intermittently making stuff super hot, because the customer, if it's a huge job, is just 300,000 miles, AC compressor is about to go out, couple, other problems. They don't want to put a crap ton of money in this, but if it's, under $700 or something, they'll make it run again. Temporary repair, we'll JB weld this nipple up so it doesn't leak out anymore. That hole right there. Now that we take care of that leak right there, then we can go on to, hey, let's keep on driving it, see if it overheats for us. JB Weld Extreme Heat. This is my first time trying this. We got a can for Jamie's truck to use on his manifolds, but he's dragging his feet, and this is all I had laying around. My old JB Weld was, he was getting old. I didn't trust it. So you got to mix up the whole container at a time of this stuff, and it's like JB Weld that you get it from the squeeze tubes, but a little bit more liquidy. And I got a straw through that nipple of, I don't want to get it on the radiator cap where the cap goes, so I'll just wipe that extra off. But we're going to patch this up. I want it to just kind of soak into everything, nice and liquidy. Get into all those crevices of that melted hole. And I used JB Weld on the radiator of my car, and it held up for years before I got rid of that car. Never leaked. And this stuff's supposed to be even stronger and heat resistant and all that good stuff. I think it said 2 to 4 hours, and then 24 hours for the maximum cure time. So I got a straw through it, so as it starts to harden, but not all the way, I'll pull this straw out. That's just so that none of the JB Weld goes inside of there, we don't. So it's just a little straw. You can see it's nice. It's fairly liquidy. It's a paste, but it's fairly liquidy, enough that it dripped down on the radiator hose. We'll wipe that off and wipe the top of that radiator off. I'll wait for it to harden into like a little thicker paste, and then put a little more on it. But yeah, this is the extreme heat that you're supposed to be able to use for exhaust manifold and stuff like that. All right, I'd say that's looking pretty good. We got that hole nice and covered, probably sealed up, and because it's pretty liquidy at first, it probably penetrated down to the straw, making a new shell. That should hold up for a while. You can see the radiator got hot enough to kind of distort or oblong it. It's not a perfect circle anymore, so the radiator cap is kind of hard to get on there, but it still goes on. And I didn't see any leaks coming out of the radiator cap, so that's good. Our hoses could have been squishy and not pressurized, because now that that's not a perfect seal, it's like the radiator cap's not sealing, and so it's constantly interchanging. It just doesn't get hard right here anymore. I was probably going to need a new radiator and cap, so I already got the cap coming. Now we just wait for this stuff to stiffen up a little, enough that I can pull the straw out and then put a little more on it. I know somebody in the comments is going to be like, oh my God, you're such a hack. And without watching part one and without listening to the words that are coming out of my mouth, the guy does not want to put money into this. If it's a big thing like a head gasket, he wants to keep it like under 500 or something. Otherwise, he's just going to trade it in or get a new car. This is simply for a diag. I need to seal the coolant system, and it's squirting out of there. So we seal it, temporary fix, cheap fix, redneck fix. That way I can drive it without it squirting coolant out of there and see if it overheats again. Like, was it a one-time thing? Thermostat got stuck closed, overheated. So that's going to be your exit for your hottest coolant out of the engine. So right in this area is where it would melt first. So we wait 24 hours, wait for the JB Weld to cure, fill up the system with coolant, and that cap's not coming in for another couple days on the coolant reservoir. So I just duct taped it down in there, temporary. That way I could diag it tomorrow and have answers sooner for them. But I do have that cap coming, but it won't come in until the day after. So now tomorrow I'll be able to test drive it, see if it overheats on me. I have seen a warped head intermittently cause a overheating issue, where it's not overheating the coolant system all the time, but when it gets to a certain temperature, the warp in the head allows combustion gases into the coolant system, gets the coolant way too hot, and then causes overheating. Intermittently. All right, it has been applied for about 10 minutes now, and it is getting more tacky enough I can spin my straw and feel resistance. And I should have spun it more while it was wet to kind of circulate the JB Weld inside there. That would have been cool. But yeah, I think I can almost pull my straw out now that it's tacky enough. I'm gonna wait just a little bit longer. I don't want it to harden before I pull my straw out, then the straw will be stuck. But I don't want it to be too liquidy before I pull my straw out either, because then it'll drip down. So perfect timing is what it's all about. All right, guys, I'm pretty dumb, but you guys already knew that. I went and reread the extreme heat package, and it says metals, not plastics. And I was kind of wondering, like, I could chip off the high heat stuff in like the outer part, and like I didn't like the way it was bonding while it was starting to become hardened. I was like, yeah, this doesn't hold the plastic. That's why I reread it, and I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense. So it's for mufflers, ductwork, pipes, exhaust manifold, stuff like that. So I went back to I had to drive to the store. I had to drive like 15 minutes to the closest place that sold JB Weld. The original JB Weld, tried and true for radiator plastic tanks. I mean, it holds for years as long as you do it right. Clean your surface, whatnot. But this extreme heat did hold in the melted plastic area. you know, where it was all like, you know, melty, a lot of grooves for it to fill into. It did hold there. But anyways, now I went back over it with the original, the OG. That's that creamy goodness that I'm used to, the OG JB Weld. And now we'll give that at least 16 hours. It's starting to get dark out, so yeah, tomorrow right afternoon it'll be probably good to run, so we can finally do a test drive with the system sealed. And my parts store told me they would have that cap tomorrow, so I was like, all right. So I duct taped that on there and stuck the hose down for no reason, whatever. So that'll be ready tomorrow. The cap will be here tomorrow. And this hose is always squishy, even up to temperature, because hard to see on camera, it actually melted, it ate down a little bit, and so the cap is not sealing. It's supposed to open up at 16 psi and then exchange with the reservoir. Well, this hose is never going to stiffen unless we replace the radiator. We don't want to buy a new radiator till we figure out why it got so hot. So we put a little JB Weld on there. We won't have coolant leaking everywhere. I can take it down the highway, test drive, check for leaks. Did it get so hot because the lady was low on coolant because she has a small leak somewhere and it took months to leak out? Is it the head gasket? Is it the water pump? Sticky thermostat? What is it? We don't know. But now, tomorrow, we'll be able to test drive it because this will be sealed up. So the radiator cap still seals up, but it doesn't seal up the spot between the overflow hose. To be continued. It finally did it for me. It is pulsing. Looks like hot gas is out. Where our JB Weld's holding. We're pulsing. That's hot. That's hot. Stuck behind construction that they've been doing all year. And if you look at our heat gauge, it finally did it. Intermittent head gasket, head warpage. Our temperature is not correlating with overheating, and sometimes that can happen. So I'd say head gasket. Shut the vehicle off while we wait in traffic. Let her cool a little bit. But that coolant, I drained that reservoir down below. They should not be expanded that much unless exhaust gases are pulsing. They're overheating, expanding the coolant. But that it's actually pulsing like the temperature gauge is not showing how hot it actually is, and that's why our stuff melted. Yeah, it's not pulsing and making noise now. It's doing just fine, running just fine. So it's an intermittently warped head, possibly. Could throw some of that no leaky product in it and it'll keep on driving for a while. It may seal it up permanently. We've seen it work in the past. Maybe some Blue Devil or K-Seal. That stuff works pretty good. But I called the guy. He's like, no, it's got 300,000 miles. I'm going to buy a new car. And I was like, okay, cool. You can see our radiator hose never gets tight because there's a... that had been melted down, so this does not hold pressure. It's always allows, so the hose doesn't get tight. It's hot. We'll go down here. It's cool to the touch down here. It's not pulsing for us anymore or doing and smoking out of here. So I've seen this before, like warped heads, you know, bad head gasket, something. Our full-on coolant. This is hot. I can feel it. I can feel the coolant in there. I don't know where we are down here. Oh, yep. We're pretty much full on coolant right up in here. So yeah, she's a blown head gasket. Just a very strange situation where it I have well over an hour of drive time. If we count idle time at the garage, I don't know, 3 hours of drive and idle time, and it finally did something for us. Every time I revved it, I was hearing a weird noise out of the exhaust, but only right when the head gasket was leaking. It only leaks when it feels like it. And it was a weird noise out of the exhaust, spitting coolant out or whatever. I don't know, but it's not making the weird noise now, and it would only make the weird noise when I hit the gas. Like there was water going through the exhaust. I could actually hear it. I just picked up little Carl at school. I don't know, 12-minute drive, and then we took the long way around to hit some highways, coming back to the garage. He was in the car with me, and I was like, you hear that? He hears like, it sounds like it's coming from the rear out of the exhaust. He's like, yeah, it just started making that noise. And right after it started making that noise, we came up to the construction, and I was like, I'm going to check on it. We're stopped in construction, and sure enough, there was doing that spit and stuff. Spit, 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 overheating, exhaust gases being pushed through. I shut it off for only about 1 to 2 minutes, then traffic started moving in the construction, so I started her back up. No problems all the way home. So it is expelling exhaust gases into the coolant system only when it feels like it's a warped head or head gasket. And when it does that, it's shooting some coolant or something out the exhaust that changes the exhaust noise. It sounds just like water's running through the exhaust only when you hit the gas pedal. So every time I was accelerating, it was like a weird noise. You'd have to hear it. But I think we got it figured out. Intermittent head gasket or warped head. It only feels like leaking and producing insane amount of heat when it feels like it. Not all the time. Just like literally 3 hours of running, did it once. And I think that's the same thing. Whoever was driving it was like, oh, it's leaking coolant. And it just, at a certain temperature, certain things line up, it allows the exhaust gases through the head gasket into the coolant system. I asked, and as far as we know, no head gasket sealer has been put on this, so I have no idea what that weird, yucky substance was that blew out of the reservoir or hose. We didn't get it hot enough that it remelted the radiator or anything. My only guess, that weird substance was the plastic melted and somehow combined with the coolant to make a swamp mud type consistency, non-solidified paste. It doesn't make sense to me. I've never seen or smelt something quite like that before in 20 years of working on cars. So still a little bit of confusion, but I'm going to let it cool down and we'll see what everything looks like after it cools down. All right, she's nice and cool now. It's getting dark. It's time to call it a day, people. Let's see what we got. And flashlight. You can see our JB weld job did the trick just like I said it would. It's going to be fine. And we are back down to, I can't even see the fluid. Half the radiator's gone, so it bubbles out. When that head decides to leak, it squirts it all out. Overflows here, exhaust gases and pulsing and bubbling. And we lose that much fluid. And we did not lose half or a full amount of coolant from that bubbling. There's just no way that's going to happen. So we're also spitting some out the exhaust. So that's a diag.